Thank you. It's a real pleasure and it's an honor to be out here with you in Milwaukee with the G9 Foundation. And I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about how we're going to change the dialogue about childhood cancer and how each and every one of you can help drive the next generation of cures. What do I mean by changing the dialogue? Well, childhood cancer is often pointed to as a success story. And the reason that is, if you take the most common childhood cancer, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, ALL, a child born with ALL in the 1960s had a less than 10% chance of being cured. That same child born today with ALL has an almost 90% chance of being cured. That has come through research. But you have to look deeper. That doesn't tell the whole story. Let me tell you about a patient I care for who I saw just a short while ago. She was on her way to college. I had cared for her since she was 6 years old when she was diagnosed with ALL. Her leukemia relapsed. We continued to treat her, and I was seeing her 5 years off of all treatment. She was on the path to long-term survivorship. She was excited, as anyone would be, about the prospect of going to college. She was a bit nervous, but she was looking forward to it. And if you saw her, you would look at her and say, she's your most beautiful high school graduate, poised for a future. You wouldn't be able to distinguish her from any number of graduating seniors. What you wouldn't know is that she had undergone 2 hip replacements. She had undergone a knee replacement, had surgery on both her shoulders and both her ankles. All those complications in an 18-year-old from the treatment we had given her. The drugs that we use today were discovered in the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s. We have learned how to use these drugs to maximal benefit, but the price children pay during treatment and after treatment is far too great. More than half of the children who are long-term survivors carry the burden of treatment with them with serious health consequences for the rest of their lives. So we need to change the dialogue. We need to restore a sense of urgency to the problem. Science is poised to do that. The tools that we have today, we couldn't have imagined even 5 years ago. Let me give you an example. The first human genome was sequenced in 2001. It marked a historic milestone. At that time, it took a global effort to sequence one genome. It cost well over $1 billion. Today, we can sequence that same genome for almost $1,000. The pace of science is unimaginable. We are beginning to unlock the drivers of cancer, and now we have to take that knowledge and build better therapies. How are we going to do this? Well, we can't do it without foundations like G9. I got to know G9 just a few years ago when John reached out to me to talk about IBAC-JAC and the G9 project and to introduce me to Annie and Sarah. I very quickly understood that this was something different. This was a group that was going to make a difference. At the time, we were developing a new program that we called Project Every Child. Now, I have the good fortune to lead a group called the Children's Oncology Group that brings together virtually every childhood cancer center and university in this country, in Canada and other parts of the world. More than 90% of children who have cancer are cared for at a COG site, and many of them participate in research. And we often talk about childhood cancer as if it were one disease, but that's wrong. It's more than 150 diseases, and as we understand the underpinnings of these diseases, it's going to turn out to be many more. Most, if not all, of these cancers are ultra rare, but we are beginning to understand them. The revolution in cancer treatment, targeted therapy, began shortly after the human genome was sequenced with a drug called Gleevec. And Gleevec transformed the lives of a very rare cancer in adults called CML. Very difficult to treat in the past, transformed it with a targeted therapy. We quickly moved that drug into a rare form of childhood ALL and began to see cures when we had never seen them before. But that was one very rare subset of cancer. Now, we're beginning to understand that what we had thought were more common childhood cancers are a group of uncommon cancers. How are we going to sort this out? How are we going to bring new cures? So Project Every Child is now a research protocol that's available to every child in this country with the promise that if we take extra tumor from the time of diagnosis, we will combine that tumor with tumors from children across this country and will commit to figuring out what's driving that cancer. The most recent success is happening with the new discovery that we found that there's another type of ALL that's driven by a gene that's somewhat related to CML that we discovered about 3 years ago. And now there's a drug that was developed for a different purpose that we think may work. There are only about 50 children a year who will have that. But if one of those children is yours, you only want the best. You want research done, you want the greatest science brought to bear. And Project Every Child is doing that. Every child with ALL in this country is going to be screened through Project Every Child. And if we find that mutation in their leukemia, we're going to give a new drug and combine it with our other therapy to see if we can improve the outcome. And we think we have to do this one disease at a time. Every time there's an advance, if there's a new drug, let's find where those children are, let's offer them hope. Let's advance the field. And Project Every Child will do that. But Project Every Child wouldn't have gotten off the ground if it weren't for G9. G9 understood the importance of defining new drugs and to bring these treatments to children all over the country. And they invested the hard-earned money they've raised in Project Every Child that's allowed us to get off the ground. We opened the study about half a year ago. More than 2,000 children are already enrolled. We could not have done that for G9. And for that, at this point in time, I would just like to say, thank you for believing. Thank you. Childhood cancer, fortunately, is rare. But what that means is that pharmaceutical companies, biotechnology companies, generally don't have a good economic model to develop a drug for 50 children a year or 100 children a year. They need a way forward, and we need to partner. Government supports our research, but they're not doing enough. We can't do this without the community. We have to change the dialogue and make childhood cancer a priority again. Death from cancer remains a leading cause of death from disease in children in this country. That is an important fact to remember, the leading cause of death from disease. And we can make a difference. Now, you may have heard on the news last week that the Centers for Disease Control announced that leukemia was no longer the leading cause of cancer deaths, that our progress in leukemia had come to a point where it no longer is the number one cause. Currently, brain tumors are the number one cause. So my response to that, while welcome news that we continue to make progress, is it shows that research works. Research can make a difference in children's lives today. It will make a difference in children's lives tomorrow. We need to invest more, and we need to invest more quickly. Children who are being treated for cancer today don't have the luxury of waiting for a future discovery. They need the work to happen now. So I ask you to support this remarkable foundation. They are going to make a difference, and I can assure you, as you support them, you're going to feel proud of being part of helping improve the lives of children with cancer. And you can do that. If you ever needed inspiration, you don't have to look far. You look at Sarah, you look at Annie, you look at Tommy. I'm awed and inspired. Thank you.